Welcome, dear listeners, to the 7th podcast of the Cubic Wisdom Project. My name is Nüket Kardam. Our series of podcasts is called The Power of Poetry. Poetry is a very powerful medium to help us go deeper into ourselves and to practice our own creativity. So today, instead of an exploration of my own poems, I thought it's time to invite other poets and hear their poems and investigate how they were inspired to write. I have invited Marie Boucher, who is an accomplished poet, who will recite for us a couple of poems, and then we will discuss her creative process, why and how she came to express herself through poetry, and have some suggestions for you as well, dear listeners. So Marie Boucher is an assistant professor and program head for English for academic and professional purposes at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey, California. She organizes an annual poetry week each April, and she has read at multiple venues in the Monterey and San Francisco Bay areas. Marie has published in the Porter Gulch Review, Monterey Poetry Review, and other literary anthologies, and is working on a manuscript of poetry and images called Becoming River. She is a self-taught naturalist and is committed to the stewardship of Carmel River. She has been a lead organizer of the annual community event, California Wildlife Day, through her work at Carmel River Watershed Conservancy. Marie's writing is inspired by the urgency of reweaving our human story as one integrated and interdependent world with the natural world, And she invites you to join the monthly international poetry gatherings. It happens on the last Sunday of the month from 3:30 to 5 p.m. in Monterey, California. Information can be found at https://icg.midcreate.net. Hello, Marie. I'm so happy that you're here with us. I am delighted to invite you, and I'm so glad you accepted our invitation to come join us today on our podcast. You are our first poet joining our podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Nüket. It is such a pleasure and honor to be your first poet on this podcast and to share some reflections on poetry and creativity and to be part of your world. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, that's so fantastic. I decided that, okay, I write some poems, but I really want to hear from other poets. There's so wonderful poets around the world, and you are one of them. I've already heard your poetry and admired it. So therefore, I am honored that you are my first guests. So I wanted to find out, as maybe to start our conversation today, I wanted to know what inspired you to write poetry. I'm very interested to know that.
Yeah, that's an excellent first question. Of course, I think many of us, even as children, would scribble notes and learn little lines and poetry. But it wasn't until I was a literature major in college.
Right.
But it wasn't until there was more of a crisis in my life that I became very serious and committed to it. And it was when my father was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer.
Oh.
And so I went to poetry just out of necessity to really be able to process what I was going through with my father's illness and impending death, which came on quite unexpectedly. So then it was like this refuge that I threw myself into, and I started taking poetry classes. I worked with Ellen Bass at Esalen, and I had some wonderful courses with Naomi Shihab Nye, whom I love so much, at Tassajara. And I wanted to throw myself into this world where I could express these very vulnerable and tender emotions and feelings I was having through this journey of losing my father.
Wow, I can definitely see that and understand how your father's sickness would allow you in a way to dive deeper into yourself, which also reminds me from a Sufi perspective. As you know, I'm very interested in the Sufi aspect of how we interpret the world too. And I'm thinking that sometimes the pain we experience really opens up something new, a whole new world for us, and brings up, brings our creativity up somehow. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think poetry is transcendent that way. And because you have to distill things down to their elemental parts.
Yeah.
Right? It's the raw emotion, and it's the description of things that are happening in the present moment that bring it very present.
Yes.
And make it both personal and universal at the same time when we're experiencing something like a loss, or we're just noticing something very beautiful. It's that paying attention and getting very close to the subject or close to the emotion that then allows for us to feel it at a deeper level and express it in a succinct way.
So true, so true. So what happened then? I'm wondering, of course, after your father, you started to create this poetry, but clearly it continued throughout your life, and you still write beautiful poems. So that was like a starting point, right?
Yeah, that was the starting point of me taking it seriously and trying to take more courses and publish and be more in a literary publish and poetic community. That was 2011.
Right.
And then since then, I've written, and I approach it a lot like a journal. Like, you have to be dedicated and you have to write frequently, but then sometimes it comes in fits and starts, and it's about, again, being present. I write a lot about the river, the Carmel River, because I have a deep love for the river and all of its seasons. I'm a self-taught naturalist, and I've been studying the river for even probably longer than being a dedicated poet. I think I've lived in this area for over 30 years, and I fell in love with the river, and I just kept going in all of its seasons to learn its flows and its moods. And sometimes I refer to the river as she, like you would in a foreign language. I feel like it's it's a being. This energy.
Definitely, it's alive. You referred to something about how the poetry came to you. Because I'm also very interested in creativity itself. So you said that you were inspired at times and not other times. Would you be able to describe, how most poets say they can't just sit down and write. It doesn't work that way for most people. What is your creativity process? I'm curious.
That's an excellent question. I think it does occur in moments when I'm in nature a lot. That nature is my inspiration.
Right.
But then it also can appear in a dream. It can appear in a dream, or just in a moment, or a phrase that somebody says that I recall and record, and then that is just the beginning, like the opening line. I had one of my wonderful experiences at Tassajara at the writers' retreat. There was I got to see Joan Baez.
Which was you.
Which was really exceptional. And so, of course, I had to write a poem about seeing Joan Baez at the hot springs in Tassajara. So there's like those moments where you're just blown away with an experience, or it could just be something very simple, like watching the mergansers float down the river and how the light is cascading across the surface of the water, and you want to capture that in a way that is different than in a photograph.
I see. I mean, I'm convinced that everybody is creative, because we take part in the creativity of the world, because our creator is creative, and therefore we are creative. So I want to encourage all our listeners that everyone can be inspired to become creative in an art. It doesn't have to be poetry necessarily, but I'm very interested to know how everyone has their own creative process. It's both unique, but yet at the same time kind of universal too, it seems.
Absolutely. And for some people, it's very visual. It can be drawing or photography, music is right. It's all of it. It is like both the art and a science. It's so sublime and a universal language.
Totally.
So everybody, as you said, has their own art form.
Yeah.
And things they can tap into.
Absolutely.
As part of the creative process.
But with the poetry, the words almost are divine when it's heard from a good poet, I think. And so that it comes through the ear, but it also affects the heart in a beautiful way. You know, it's not just the ear, but it starts with the ear or it starts with the eyes, but then it affects your entire self. And in fact, I can't wait to hear some of your poems, but unless you had something to add to your own creative process, we can take a short break and then hear your poetry.
That sounds perfect. Thank you.
Let's do that then. We'll be back very shortly. Well, this is a perfect start to hear your poem on the river, Marie. So please recite for us, if you will, your poem about the river that you mentioned earlier.
Thank you so much, Nuket. Yes, this was a recording from being on the river, an experience of floating the river, which was like a big initiation for actually having a different perspective.
Yeah.
And most of my poems are about the Carmel River in particular, but I actually have chosen one today that makes references to the Rio Grande, which is the big river of that goes through New Mexico, and that's the land where my family lives. And so I've combined a little bit of Spanish and English here. So the refrain is in Spanish, soy el río, I am the river. So I'm going to read about that and then we can discuss.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Soy el río. Soy el río grande, el río pequeño, el río que se mueve en todo el mundo. I am the river that flows through every mountain, carving granite into sand, tumbling your stories over my tongue till smooth, rough edges hewn. Your salty tears I fashion into crystals, gems for you to collect again or set free in the sea. I renew weary, battered hearts, love worn and broken, tethered to roots, seeped deep into sands, loose their hold to breathe again. Soy el río grande, el río pequeño, el río que se mueve en todo el mundo. All life depends on me. Yet I'm taken for granted, tapped dry with just enough agua for cranes passing by. The cranes have been following my lines and designs for millions of years. They perform a dance with their mates in the bosque and rest by my shores till late. Soy el río grande, el río pequeño, el río que se mueve en todo el mundo. I am the river, witness to your passionate throws with your lover, hips undulating in rhythms to my flows. I see you attempting to hide your desire, for none to see you frolicking at sea. I am the river that carried the ashes of your father and mother to be consecrated by me. I know you remarried them in the urn on your mantle, and you'll surrender them to me at the mouth of the sea. Soy el río grande, el río pequeño, el río que se mueve en todo el mundo. I am the same water that La Llorona wept for her lover, the same water offered in sacred bowls on Tibetan altars, same water protected by Sioux, Lakotas, and hopefully you. Soy el río grande, el río pequeño, el río que se mueve en todo el mundo. Have you not looked at the veins in your hands and seen me? If it were not for me, none of us would be. Sin agua nadie existe. Without water, we are nothing. Sin duda, el agua es sagrada. Water is sacred. The river flows through you and me. Somos los ríos. We are the rivers. Somos los ríos que se mueven en todo el mundo, that move through all the world. Somos el agua, los ríos, la sagrada, los ríos, todos los ríos. Somos.
I am really speechless, Marie. I don't know. It's words can't express how I feel now from hearing your poem, because it included everything. You know, we come from water. So yeah, please tell us some more. Wow, what inspired you and how you got to this beautiful poem that you did. You know, I am amazed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazed.
Yeah, I tend to do a lot of observation, and when I was visiting El Rio Grande, the largest river, it's called the large river, and it was the water level was so low, and so I had this sorrow and sadness for the, for our human consumption of water and overconsumption and the lack of balance in the planet. And so there's there's at the one hand there's an empathy for the river from one voice, and then there's the voice of me kind of becoming the river and being the river, and the river speaking, and the river saying that it also holds all of our sorrows and cares and tears, and yet it still flows. It always flows to the sea. It always knows its destination. So whether we're talking about the Rio Grande or the Carmel River or any river, we can find our river and we can find our source, because water is our source. Water is our life, and without water there is no life. So we have to be more conscientious about how we take care of our water. Our fresh water is so limited, and yet at the same time it's abundant. It has always served us for so long. And so my poetry is about remembering to take care, and then for our integral relationship between water and land and the humans, as well as all beings that share this amazing landscape and watershed.
Yes. I mean, I can hear this beautiful conversation you're having with the river, with other people, with yourself. It all is sort of one, but yet at the same time you need that separation so that you can also talk to the river, talk to the people to take care of the river. But ultimately, of course, also the Sufi poems talk about this a lot, that, we are all yearning to join the ocean. So there's all these poems about the drop that joins the sea. So in that sense, you mentioned that the river is joining the sea.
Yes, I've been at the river, at the meeting of the river and the sea at our lovely Carmel River State Beach when it breaches. And it's really, truly a most magical experience of that drop by drop. And then it breaches the sand naturally without the human interference, and becomes one drop, and then it becomes this roar. And it goes from this small seed to then this roar of the river, the sweet water meeting the salty water of the sea, and it's beautiful.
Wow. I mean, when you say the sweet water meeting the salt water of the sea, there is also this, again, I can't but think of the Sufi way of thinking about this, is that there's a place called the Barzakh, which is in between, and that's where the salt water and the sea water meet. But in that case, they don't mix because they're considered to be, two different worlds. But at the same time, the human being is considered to be the in-between, belonging to both worlds. So they don't mix, but at the same time, we belong to both of these worlds, which is very, very interesting.
Think of our tears, salt
Yeah.
water tears.
Right.
And yet, we're born of more of a sweet water from the womb. And
How come?
so we have both the salty and the sweet within us as well.
Oh,
and
wow.
our own organism is primarily water, primarily
Right.
fresh water. But then we have the salt also,
Oh.
the tears.
I'd never thought about that, quite in this way. Wow.
Yeah.
So your poem also really excites me because there's a very sort of socially responsible approach to the river that I see, from your sort of environmental perspective of saving and treating the river well. I mean, so, as human beings, we have everything for us that's been created for us, And what do? But we don't treat it well.
Yeah.
And you're crying out, saying that we need to treat the river because it's nobody else except us. It's still us.
Absolutely. The water is us, and once we lose that connection and we have separation, we don't remember our origin and our source, that we are water, that we need to take care of all the waters for us to be healthy. That is like the most important thing for this moment in history, I think, for us to reconcile with and become in greater balance with the fact that we are nature, we are water, we are all that brings life. So we need to honor that. I want to mention one reference that I did speak of about the Lakotas and the water protectors.
Okay.
I wrote the poem at the time when there was the protest for the pipeline, Dakota pipeline. And the protest was led by many Native people who were going on the front lines in the Dakotas to say no to this pipeline, because the oil was then the pipeline was going to be going through sacred lands and sacred waterways, which of course all land is sacred, and all original lands are native lands. But whenever there's a rupture in the pipes, then this can contaminate our water stream.
Of course.
So this is part of the calling out of the collective for us to remember that we need to really, really steward these waters. And this is happening a lot on the front lines with Indigenous voices across this country and other countries on the planet.
Yes, we need more of it. And I feel like I want to suggest to our listeners, which you may already be doing that, but just go by a river and sit there and just watch and hear and become more and more aware. What suggestions would you have for our listeners for becoming more cognizant, more aware of what you just said?
Yes. I see your gestures, and I'm thinking of attunement and being in tune and literally listening to the river.
Yes.
It's both a meditative and a slowing down process and taking the time. So we always, in this busy world, think that we don't have enough time. Well, you need to integrate it, just like the exercise and the Qigong and all of these practices that make us healthier. You need to integrate your visitation to the river, to your sanctuaries, to these sacred places on land and sea, and to all the waterways. That needs to be part of a regular practice. I mean, ideally, it could be daily for some people, but for some it might be, on their vacations.
Sure.
But, it should really be a integrated practice of honoring. And I would say I perform regularly sacred ceremony at the meeting of the river and the sea.
I see.
And that's where I honor loved ones who have passed.
Yes.
And that's where I say my prayers, and where I feel there is a sacred joining of those two worlds that you mentioned.
Yes.
And just it's a very special place.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Look where your poetry took us, Mary. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. I mean, I wish we had like the whole day to discuss this. What I'd like to do now is maybe take another little short break, and I would love to hear one more poem if you can, please, after that.
Sounds perfect. Thank you.
Okay, let's do that. We'll be back. Welcome back. So now it will be great to hear one more poem. Of course, we'd like to hear much more, but maybe another time too. But for now, can we hear one more poem from you, Marie?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Nuket. Since we were talking about the sacred, I think I would like to read a shorter poem called Where is Your Prayer?
Oh, okay.
Here it is. Where is your prayer? Do you give your prayer to the seed, to the root, to the flower, to the berry, to the wizened fruit? Do you pray to all at every age, at every stage? Do you give your prayer to yourself, to your child, to your loved ones no longer with breath? Do you continue to speak their names, speak their prayers out loud on mountaintops? Do you see their smiles in your breath, in every mile, in every hill you climb? Do you respect thorns on the reddest rose, knowing they protect her beauty? Do you bow down to earthworms, tilling the soil? Do you rejoice at the sight of rain and then sun again when it emerges? If only we wouldn't rush the flower to bloom. If only we spent more time praying when it was a seed, watering the roots, tending the young tender shoots. Wouldn't the blossom be even more splendid, the fruit more luscious, had we plunged our hands into the soil, sung praises, and caressed the earth first? When my bones are too brittle, ready to break, and I can no longer hold your hand, and I can no longer take a breath, hold me one last time. Anoint me with rose water and rose petals and a drop of your blood. Till me into the soil, tend me, feed me your hopes and tears. Pray for me and await the budding of the most glorious rose.
Wow. 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 Oh, I mean, this one is about life and death, about the way I see it, about the cycle and how to honor the entire cycle of life in everything. And it makes me think about how, for example, in a seed, there is the tree. It exists in the seed. I mean, your poem, this poem is extraordinary. It just, went straight to my heart.
Thank you so much, Nuket. It's what you just said about the tree being in the seed. It's one of those reflections that we often don't think about. But I have another poem that's about the mama oak, about the 300 or 400 or 500-year oak. We don't even know how old she is. But imagine that she started in the acorn.
Yes.
One acorn, and now this tree has seen generations.
Amazing.
It has seen all of these lifetimes in human life, and yet it still keeps on giving, it's still living, and we forget the value of that potent seed
Yes.
I just planted some
Yes.
fresh seeds in my garden and saw from the most luscious, yummy melon that I had the other day, a Tuscan melon, and I planted them and I got the first couple of shoots today.
You did?
Yes.
Wow. Wow, life. I mean, life is so sacred, so beautiful, and it's in everything. Really. I mean, those seeds are conscious too, in a way. Mm-hmm. They are. If they weren't, how could they grow?
Yeah, I think of Dr. Emoto, the Japanese scientist who studied water under the microscope.
Right.
And how when we project negative emotions, the crystals would form in a negative way, and they would become deformed. But when there were positive emotions of joy and happiness and gratitude, then it would make the most extraordinary, beautiful crystals under the microscope.
How do you explain that?
Yeah. So our emotive state influences nature, it influences energy, the energetic field, it influences how we feel when we're with others, and also how we just nourish, plants and all around us. So if we can cultivate more of this good energy and this idea of bringing forth the best from the seed, and really appreciating that which is given to us, we will all be in a better place.
Definitely. To me also, what you are really hoping and suggesting, practicing, is more awareness. I mean, if we could become more aware through our eyes, through our sensations, through our feelings, through our imagination, our thoughts, like being aware instead of escaping somewhere.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't it be a different world?
Yes. I think of all the images that you see of people meditating and how I don't know if you're familiar with the movie I Am. It's a great movie.
No, I'm not.
That speaks to this idea of being able to impact energetic fields across a larger field, larger energetic field, and just how much we can change, like the physical world, or for the better, by cultivating awareness and really good intentions, strong intentions for our stronger communications, healthy relationships. We can even influence, the things that seem so difficult to change, that are so embedded societally. We can change these one relationship at a time.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes, intention is so important, because that then energy follows that intention, and since everything is energy, if we have the intention that's positive, then of course we are affecting others, even at a distance from us, we are still affecting them. There's no question. What's the name of the movie that you mentioned? I Am?
That's it.
Really? Mm-hmm. So it can be found anywhere if somebody wanted to look up and watch it? Probably, right?
Yes, it's from the 90s, I believe.
Okay. But it's probably still around.
It's still around. It's a film.
I Am.
It's a film I used to show my students, because it just opens with a simple question. What is wrong with the world, and what can I do about it?
Yes.
What can we do about it?
Yes.
And there's a series of interviews with Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama and scientists and the people at the HeartMath Institute here in Santa Cruz, and all of these philosophers, scientists, artists, everyone, and they all come up with different contexts to talk about how through our human experience we are both the problem and the solution, right?
Very true.
We have so much opportunity, and we already have so much information.
Yeah.
It's more about committing to living in a sustainable world, to treating each other well, to communicating effectively, to taking a breath when we feel anger and conflict, and adjusting our attitudes. And these are all things that we can do.
We can do.
There's nothing, we don't have to find new solutions to everything. We need to really hone the gifts we already have.
Totally. I completely, totally agree with you. And in this poem, I find something so real, at the same time as it's dramatic. There's a drama in this poem, and there's a lot of movement and drama. But at the same time, it's very, very real and grounded.
Yeah, I was looking at a rose, one of my favorite roses, and I was thinking about when I have to say goodbye to my child, and what will that experience be, and how I want to give as much as I can to my child now, but I would hope that then through my experiences and whatever I've given, that then that gift will still be received like a new rose, right?
Yes.
So we have all these legacies, and I feel like our spirits and our gifts that we've given during this lifetime, they do live on.
They do, definitely. I mean, that's the cycle that we're talking about. I believe nothing is lost in that way. It comes back. There's a cycle, definitely. And I believe that people who are close to us, who are not in this world now, are still with us. There's no question about it, too. And from what you think is a dead rose, a new, beautiful rose comes from it, too. So, from death comes birth, from birth then we die. I mean, it's a definite cycle. All of it is there in your poem.
Yeah, we see the cycle of life in the garden.
Yeah.
We see it with the river and the ocean and all these organisms that I think of the steelhead trout here, that they learn their first rainbow trout in the river stem, and then they learn to go to the sea. They transfer from being freshwater beings to saltwater beings, and then they come back. And they come back to their river. They know the scent.
How do they know that?
They know the scent of their river, and they come back and they spawn, and maybe they live for 1 or 2 years, and then they die, and then their bodies nourish the trees, the redwoods, and give back to the earth. Yeah. So there's all these inherent cycles in the natural world, and the more we're aware of those natural cycles, the more we realize, oh yeah, we are too.
We are part of it.
We are part of it.
We are definitely part of it, whether we like it or not.
Yes.
I love it. I really want to read these poems again and again, because as you well know, a good poem, you read it one more time and you get something else out of it. Each time you get something different out of it. So I would like to ask you how we could access, if our listeners want to access some of your poems, want to know more about you, what can we do? Because you gave us a taste, and I feel like it's not enough.
Oh, thank you, Nuket. Well, I want to remind listeners that I'm at the International, the Middlebury Institute for International Studies.
Yes.
And we
in Monterey, California.
In Monterey, California, we have a monthly gathering. We call it the International Cultural Gathering, and we gather in person once a month, the last Sunday of the month, from 3:30 to 5, and it's either on the campus or it is in our local East Village Cafe. So it's wonderful to gather in person. That's really wonderful if you're local. And then all people are welcome to read poems in different languages. We have a really vibrant community. And then as far as my personal poems, I am working on a collection
Good.
that will be called Becoming River.
Oh.
And that it's all about the river and from the headwaters to the sea. And I've been published in other literary journals and things, and that is also available to be found on my bio on the website at Miss. So,
good.
So you could see
they can go there.
Mm-hmm.
Middlebury Institute of International Studies, if you Google it, then the faculty bios that you can also find there. There will be a bio of you, Marie Boucher, and then they can go to these different poems from the literary journals.
Right, and the ICG, we call it International Cultural Gathering. We also have our own web page through the university, through the institute, where you can both contribute poems and you can hear poems that have been previously uploaded from prior events. We have every April we honor Poetry Month and do a full week of poetry at the institute, and we bring in different guests,
and everyone is welcome.
And
right?
Everyone is welcome. So there's lots of opportunities throughout the year, as well as during April, during the Poetry Month.
Excellent, excellent. Where is this website, the ICC website? Is it connected to Miss?
Yes, the ICG.
ICG.
If you also go to the main Miss page and look for International Cultural Gathering or icg.mid.
Mid-create?
Mid-create.
Yes. Just one more time. ICG, what does it stand for? One more time.
International Cultural
Gathering.
And we have a club, so that's...
Right.
Yes.
But people from the community, other people are also welcome to join. In fact, I have to say I have joined your gatherings whenever I could and really, really enjoyed it. And I would definitely encourage our dear listeners also to check them out, because it is a vibrant community. And here in Monterey, we have a lot of students from different parts of the world, and also people who are settled here from different parts of the world too. So it's an international community here.
Yes.
Right?
We encourage people to come and read in whatever language, because the original language in which the poem is written is the language in which we love to listen to it and hear it read, because you hear all the nuances and cadences of the language. And so yes, we hope that if you are local or visiting in Monterey, that you can join us at one of our monthly gatherings.
That would be wonderful. One quick question. It's really interesting to hear people recite a poem in a different language that you don't understand the meaning, but yet you get something from it. How do you explain that?
I think it's like music, right?
So
poetry is another form which is like music, where you can feel the tenor and rhythm, and you can feel the emotions.
That's it.
There was a colleague who wrote about his beloved mother and her passing, and I could hear and understand everything. Not everything, but I could understand the general feeling and some of the words in the poem, even though I didn't understand his native tongue.
Yes, I mean, actually now you reminded me, as I grew up in Turkey, and I listened to many songs in different languages, which I didn't understand, but I still loved the songs. So how is this different, right? It's the same idea.
Right, yeah. We're still expressing emotion through the cadence and tone of voice, through our rhythms. We can hear...
How interesting.
We can hear joy, we can hear sorrow, we can hear these emotions.
For sure. Well, Marie, I do hope that you continue writing your beautiful poems. Just keep going. It has been so wonderful to have you here today. I'm so delighted. Just wanted to ask if there's anything else you would like to add before we conclude, as we're coming to the end of our podcast.
Thank you, Nuket, for the invitation. It's been such a pleasure. And I just hope that people will continue to write and create and get out in nature and express themselves and enjoy this beautiful gift, this journey that we're all on together.
That's it. And we are all creative. That's the bottom line.
Yes.
Whatever, field you want to create in, go ahead and do it. All right. All right. Love you all. And we're going to say goodbye right here and thank Marie one more time. Thank you. Thank you. We have come to the end of another podcast. I hope that this conversation with Marie Boucher has excited you, and I hope you enjoyed listening to her beautiful poems. Please feel free to write to us with questions, comments, feedback at cubicwisdomproject, one word, at gmail.com. We would be delighted to hear from you. Look for our podcasts on youtube.com/@cubicwisdom. Or you can also listen to our podcasts at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Cubic Wisdom Project, Power of Poetry. Looking forward to being with you at our next podcast. Take care and goodbye for now. Be well.